I I am I'm convinced that my personal productivity. I don't even like saying the word productivity, but I think that my personal productivity is defined by what I do on the days when I look back on that day and I'm like, man, I'm not sure I did anything today.
So let's rewind just a bit. Is it how do you come down on productivity versus productivity? I know the answer because I just heard it, but
To how to say the word,
yeah, which is correct?
I genuinely think that I would use either. And
Would both?
I think that as I get halfway through the word or whatever, however many letters through the word, I'm making a game time decision each time, and every time I'm pretty sure I'm failing.
Well, I always have to ask because I do live in Kentucky, and there are pronunciations where it's just been the way the word's been pronounced my entire life. And sentient versus sentient is one of those words. So I always like to clarify productivity versus productivity. That's another one.
I mean, I think I probably fall on. Well, hold on, I don't even remember what I said. I think I fall on productivity.
That's what you said.
Is that what
Yeah.
I said the first time? But I'm not. I wouldn't be against saying productivity at some point.
Okay.
It wouldn't surprise me if you at some point heard me say productivity. Although
Gotcha.
I will say that when I'm thinking the word productivity, I'm thinking that it is something involving a pro as opposed to a prod. When I think of productivities, I'm definitely thinking more of prods.
So it's like a mood ring, depending on the day and the mindset. Productivity or productivity? Are you
I mean,
prodding?
sure, but citation needed. I don't have any actual proof that I use one or the other. And the fact that I just said productivity without thinking too much about it tells me that I probably say productivity.
Yeah. But anyway, I derailed your original point, which is you were making a point
If I get
about
to the end of the day and I'm like, I didn't do anything today, but instead I actually, you know, had breakfast with the family, put the kids on the bus, went and grabbed, coffee on the way back home, uh, had 3 phone calls, with like an investor who I didn't know and was brand new, one with a repeat client or customer, one with a peer that I didn't have any direct business with, but it was a catching up thing. Recorded a podcast episode, posted a podcast episode, took a 45-minute nap, played an hour and 45 minutes of video games, picked up the kids, grabbed groceries. There's no dry cleaning post pandemic, so I don't do that. But like the point is, my mind might say, I feel like I did nothing that day. And then as I look back on where the actual time went, I think all I did was just adjust my definition of nothing.
I sometimes fall into the trap of thinking that productivity is measured by things you can put on the bookshelf and like big, huge things. And I have to reframe the way I evaluate productivity because there are a bunch of little baby steps that lead to the bookshelf or the noteworthy thing that I've accomplished. So I have to really I feel like and maybe we're all victims of social media in that respect. I feel like I should have this portfolio of things that I've accomplished every day that someone would make like this
Would make
really
a reel of, yeah.
yeah, yeah, and it's like it just doesn't go that way. It just
Well, so
doesn't
like
go that way.
I'm as I'm thinking about this, that exact thought came to my mind when I was having the I didn't do anything day, and then I went through the day that I had, and I pictured, the reel of me riding my bike around town to each of these different things that I was doing. And I'm like, that would make a perfectly good reel. I mean, can I be bothered to spend the extra time on making the reel? Absolutely not. I mean, I don't think the average person cares about my day to day, but as a creative person, I'm picturing what it would look like to make the boring, tedious stuff that I did all day and then, had a moment of thinking I didn't do anything today. I thought about what it would look like to stick that together into a, storytelling short form social media post with a quick cut video from the perspective of my bike handlebars. And I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I could make this look like I had a just the most joyful fall crisp day that ever has been.
So probably, and that's why I'm horrible with social media. That's way too much work. Way too much work.
It's
The
not only, I feel like it's not that it's too much work. It's that I am intimidated by not knowing how to do that work quickly and cleanly,
I mean, yeah, I guess.
because you don't know how much work it actually is. We've been down this road before. What
Yeah.
if you treated the personal diary of Terry, recording the stuff that you did through your day to day from, the eyes of Terry, that could just be a thing that you did automatically, like washing your hands or making food or getting dressed. But I mean, I'm not going to shift my life around to make it that. And I would feel so uncomfortable the first 15 times I did it that there's no
Oh,
way I'd be able to get over that hump.
oh yeah. I think that's a younger generation's ball game. I'm not gonna. I mean, unless I have some business interest that requires me to do it, and even then, I'm terrible at it. Even then,
I
like,
don't know, man. I don't see a whole lot of people that are older getting into
yeah,
this
for
a day
sure.
in the life. You
And
know,
if they do, I instantly think they need to see a therapist. Like something's wrong. There's something wrong with this person. It's like the skinny jeans on a 50 something or 60 something. Like it, I guess you can do it, but you know, whatever.
did you bring your companies today?
I did, and I'm pumped about this. I enjoyed this tremendously. There's a personal satisfaction. There's a professional skill, I think, associated with this that I really, really enjoy. So I'm pumped about this. Won't you explain what we're doing, please?
We're doing a segment that Terry came up with a non-name for, called "Companies Doing Cool Things," but with a cuss in it. And neither of us like the name, and neither of us have come up with a better name. So for now, I'll give a list of possible names for the segment. It could be called "New and Notable," which is a terrible name. It could be called "Companies of Note," also terrible name. It could be called "Movers and Shakers." These are the types of names that came to my mind while riding around town from nothing to nothing yesterday, trying to think of what a better name than "Companies Doing Cool Things" or "cool crap" would be. So anyway, the way that this is structured, we each have 5 companies. We're explaining what they're doing, why they matter, uh, and any other context that's important. And then we'll, gently argue with one another about their importance and extrapolate from the companies to other more mega trends. And I'm concerned about how this is going to go, because I
Well,
feel like there's a high risk that we did it two really, really, really different ways.
and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. What I'm concerned about how it's going to go is it's going to be a circuitous route.
I'm concerned that when my first one out the door is Shell Oil, I'm going to lose the room.
No, yeah, innovation is innovation.
All right, you go first.
All right, so here are my criteria, at least for today, and the companies that I selected. A unique technology, obviously, that's the whole frame. That's the frame of the segment. A unique technology. It solves a problem that might not be a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 today, but is an emerging problem to solve. And it's an application that's fairly unique to existing. There's prior art, but it's a unique application to solve a new problem or to solve an existing problem. So basically, I just used a bunch of words to say the title of the segment back in reverse. Are you
High
going
high emphasis on uniqueness.
for sure? So I feel like we should find some way. Maybe we'll figure out the logistics of this afterwards. But I feel like we should find some way to link these companies in the show notes.
They'll be in the show notes. We don't have enough cred yet with YouTube to put links in our show notes. I'll see if that's gone up since the last time I tried to include a link. I think on the other services we can include a link.
Yeah, I know we
Go,
can. I know
shoot me
we
with what's your first company? Get into it. I want to know.
a company called Regent, Regent. It's a startup developing electric sea gliders. This is so cool to me. 60 million in Series A, led by 8090 Industries and Peter Thiel's Founders Fund. They also have a partnership with Japan Airlines. Um, they have built a prototype. So, what is Regent? What is a sea glider? As of today, it's a 12-seat Jetson vehicle, basically. And for those who don't know Jetson vehicle, the Jetsons were a cartoon a long time ago that referenced flying cars. This is a version of that, I feel like. So a seascape or a sea glider, it's basically a way for coastal communities to ferry people around electrically. So it's solving a sustainability problem. It's solving a time problem. It takes a while to move someone by ferry. Think Hyannisport to Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard. Think island hopping in Hawaii, and then all the other places where that would apply. So as of today, their prototype seats 10 to 12. They have plans for later models to seat, I believe it's up to 100. The thing can go 50 miles an hour right now, 10 feet above the water in most weather conditions. So really cool. Viceroy is the name of their prototype model, their original model.
Is it using ground effect? Is that why it's 10 feet over the water?
I don't know. I didn't get into the technology specifically. 100-seat, yeah. The Regent, the Monarch is their 100-seat glider that they plan to release by 2030.
2030 sea gliders. Maybe by 2030, I will have seen a sea glider. Probably more likely to have seen one if I take an island hopping vacation somewhere,
Yeah,
or just move to the islands. That could happen.
and they've got pre-orders on the 12 seaters, a bunch of pre-orders. I don't have the exact number. Um, cool stuff.
I like that they have a straight up spec sheet right on their website and tells you what it does right there. There's a lot of renderings, which I think is required when when you have a product that doesn't quite exist yet or you have a prototype of. So just tell me everything. The only thing I would like to see is also tell me how much it costs, or a configurator or something like that, which I realize is a big ask for for a company that wants every price to be contact us for sales,
Yeah.
which is the norm. It's a sad norm, but it's the norm. All right.
How cool is their prototype rendering on the website though?
Oh my, that's such a trick question for me.
I,
Okay, so I'm going to put a box around this and say it is an amazing looking rendering. Like I want to be in this thing. I want to fly this thing.
Me too.
I want to be a passenger in it. I want to learn how to fly one. I want to become a sea glider, island hopper, island taxi pilot. I want to be a test pilot before I get to that. I mean, this is it's they've really laid out the entire vision for how this thing fits into, like where it is and why it's going to work. There's another, as you were describing this company, I was thinking about very very unexpected or different transportation companies, and this gets me to Hyperloop. And I cannot find myself compelled by Hyperloop when, how the whole thing works and how it's illustrated and how the story of Hyperloop is gonna work. I find myself feeling that story is itself in no way compelling.
We need solutions there. I feel like that. I mean, that's another one of the statements proclaiming that the sky is blue. But I think a more robust public transportation infrastructure would solve quite a few problems.
Yeah, totally. All right. So are we going back to where it's my turn then? Then
Your
am I
turn.
next? Okay. So
Yes.
my criteria were uh, robots in a broad sense, just because I felt like it, and because the first company I had in mind was in robotics. The last one on my list is not technically robots by the RIA, the Robotics Industry Association definition, but it is automated manufacturing equipment. So I'm gonna stick it into the same bucket. That was criteria number one. Criteria two, I am I'm laser focused this week on developer tools. So what this means is in industrial robots and industrial equipment, do you have something that is targeted at software developers first and foremost, in the sense that, we talk about um, skill shortages, labor shortages, digitization, industrial Internet of Things. These things don't exist in a vacuum and they don't exist in silos. If we have a lack of skilled machinists, one of the answers is bring more developers to machining. And that's I guess, potentially controversial take, in the sense that a programmer is not necessarily a machinist and vice versa. But I think we see time and time again that as you introduce variation of what the actual jobs are, the important part is bring more people to the problems that exist today and that we know are going to exist. So my criteria in a nutshell are robots, developer tools for coders, and that's my criteria. My first company is Intrinsic, which in robotics is super famous right now, if that's the kind of thing you're into. So super famous in a tiny little corner of the world. Intrinsic is a robot, uh, you know, platform, but basically they're talking about being developer tools for anybody, you, me, professional software developer, to build a robotic system or design and build a robotic system. So think of this as a piece of software where I'm going to be able to drag, a robot model in from somewhere and a machine model from somewhere and a cart and fencing if it needs fencing, and then I'm going to be able to bring like my part of, oh, I want to weld a roof onto a car. Well, let me bring in this model of a car and a model of a roof and the process model for what a welding process looks like. All these things in a simultaneously drag and drop with like live scene building and simulation, as well as code based interaction. So this is important. I like this because it gives you a front end, meaning a way to look at what you're doing, but it also gives you a coding back end. That's the first thing I like about it. The second thing I like about it is it's really not pandering to people that have already built robots before. While it's not limiting this to say, oh, if you already know how to program robots, it's not for you, but it's also just saying, the criteria for being able to build a robotic system is not that you've built a robotic system before. So those are the pieces that I really like about Intrinsic. They are notable for having been acquired by Google's parent Alphabet not terribly long ago.
So how sophisticated from a skill set standpoint do you have to be to build working programs with flow state?
So it's a closed beta, and I haven't applied for it or been accepted to it, and I don't know anybody personally that has used it. The screenshots are, if you've used Node-RED or a flow editor like that, or if you've used, flow charting software where you make a block diagram of this leads to that leads to the other thing, you'll be fine. If you have programmed a robot before, it's not going to be foreign seeming. It's just going to be more and better. And if you've worked in CAD or beyond CAD modeling, if you've worked in any kind of modeling that takes just a dimensional model like you have in CAD and layers on top of that interactions or kinematics or motion or something like that, you're going to be kind of in your zone if you've done that before. So I'll let you know again next time I've actually spent time on it, whether I feel like anybody can do it or if it's too hard. I'm actually not super concerned if anybody can do it. I don't feel like everybody needs to be able to program a robot. I just feel like more people than currently can need to be able to program a robot. So my bar is not that high.
I'm always interested with block logic like this. What's the trade-off? What's the precision trade-off with this? Or I'm assuming you can manually tinker with the blocks and have more granular control over resolution. But I'm always concerned. I'm always curious that interplay between drag and drop blocks, and how much precision do you have over the movement?
I think that I don't know, I've spent a decent amount of time around, no code solutions, which are, pure visual programming languages. And you hit a wall really, really fast with almost every one of the popular tools where it's purely visual. If I'm making a PowerPoint, if I want to have a pure visual tool, Microsoft PowerPoint is amazingly powerful, particularly if you're looking at it as this is my canvas for making stuff, and I can find best practices for animation or for adding design elements. The average PowerPoint with 20 bullets on it is not making use of the tool. The best of the best of the best of graphic design that hasn't gotten to the point of being custom one-off animation, PowerPoint is the tool for doing that for a regular human. uh, Now, should the regular human who became an ultra expert in PowerPoint, should they have gone and found a visual coding tool and then maybe pulled back a little bit more and gotten into just actual coding? I mean, it doesn't really benefit you to be an expert at building 27 piece embedded Excel formulas and not understanding that, like, you should just have done this as a regular expression, or you should have just written this as a macro. So my take on no code is that no code is not necessarily a thing. I think that low code is a thing where it gives you speed to the first set of code, but then ability to keep working on it after you've gotten that wireframe completed or you've got the basic concept down. So abstracting away from, I don't have to write every single line of code. I'm always in favor of, like, give me more layers of abstraction. Do I think that there's a market for a pure anybody can do it no code tool? Probably not. And if there was, I really don't think that robotic programming is the place where that's going to catch on and be like the beginning of all of that.
Replace robotic programming with AI, and you have the exact same discussion.
Yeah.
I really think all of these things at this point are augments. You still have to know there are really powerful GPT. The language models are very powerful in helping augmenting code production, but you still have to know. You still have to really know when there's a bug. You have to know where that bug is. You can't. There are some strong limitations to no code. Totally agree.
And I'll give you a very firm yes. And you're right. They're augments. They're also on ramps. So if you have no
For sure.
coding experience and your first interaction is Scratch, great. I mean, use Scratch, drag the blocks around. If you can work with Swift, fantastic. If you can work with Unity, I mean, there are a lot of different options for much higher levels of abstraction than just diving straight into, the big object oriented languages. And fantastic. You should use that stuff as an on ramp, and it's bringing lots and lots and lots of people to coding concepts. That doesn't mean that the no code piece is ever going to be a developer tool.
Yeah, or that you can deploy in production environments with folks who don't know the broader language set anyway.
You can deploy anything in a production environment, as we have both seen.
If you want to crash a robot, yes.
All right, what's up next?
Well, we're sort of staying in the same vein with my next one, and I mentioned this company before. Love this company. I don't know if they have sold anything. I really see this as a future. So it's an autonomous security drone. The company is called Sunflower Labs. Obviously AI enabled, but for me, this is the future. Let's think of a parallel. Let's use a military analogy as a parallel for personal, private, and commercial security systems for drones. So, in a military environment, obviously you can load up a drone with a payload, a munitions payload of some sort to take offensive or defensive actions in a military theater. We know that happens today and has been happening for some time now. I think this is the first salvo for that same concept in commercial and probably real soon residential security as well. So it's an autonomous security drone. Imagine your home, your flat security system, a sensor or a camera, something picks up movement on your property, close to your house, far from your house. Uh, it can trip the signal, whether it's a sensor again or a camera, whatever you have set up in your flat security system today. This drone can then be directed to that site. Think of it. I don't think they're loading these things up with payload yet. And payload could be mace, it could be a loudspeaker, it could be a number of different active functionalities. Don't necessarily think weapon, but it could be a payload of some sort. You could deploy the drone autonomously to the site, track the person or the threat, shall we say, and it integrates with your flat security system. So you would have some visual as to what's going on. I really see, maybe not from Sunflower directly, but I see a sort of microservice coming off of this as well for residential security integrators. So if I'm an integrator and it'll start with the wealthy or the affluent, I'm sure. But if I have someone that's willing to pay me to load up 3 or 4 of these, or however many it takes to surveil my property, I will load them up with a payload of some sort and deploy them, integrate them into their home security system. And you have, I think there's a deterrent factor. If I'm John Criminal and I see that there are a fleet of drones that take off when I enter a property, and one's talking, and you might start shooting at them, but then you've drawn attention to yourself. So I think there's a deterrent factor just in the presence of this drone, but I also think there's a protective factor from a security standpoint. So I love the company. It's AI enabled. The drone will return automatically to its perch, its base, whatever you want to call it. Can operate in any weather condition. I see this is a hedge. So the technology is awesome. I think it's an emerging solution. Um, I'll leave it at that.
I think so far your two are early,
I agree. Totally agree.
which
I
is okay.
think I think this one's early. I think you'll see, like I said, I think you'll see integrated. You'll see integrator service businesses pop up to support this. I think first with the affluent or commercial accounts. I think eventually it'll make its way to residential accounts.
I also don't think it's hard to say here about Sunflower that if Sunflower is not behind drones doing security, doing property security, someone else is going to
For
solve
sure.
security with drones. It's gonna happen.
Well, and I honestly think I can see not even a full standard deviation away from this developmentally. These for inside the house, inside a building, inside a home, again, set up with a payload of some sort, mace or some sort of deterrent. I can see these moving from an external only solution to you obviously have an external, but you also have an internal, especially for jewelry stores or commercial accounts first, but then residential as well.
I don't want to live in a world where there are small fleets of security drones patrolling the mansions that I don't own. So I'd like to call me old fashioned, but I'm going to live my life without an indoor security drone. But I'm also, I'm not huge on Roomba either. So obviously, I'm not the target audience.
I'm not huge on Roomba. I don't own a Roomba. Um,
How much do you vacuum?
More than I care to.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say that circumstances have led me to resume cleaning my entire place, which I haven't done in a lot of years, and I'm not a big fan of that. But I've done it for most of my life, and I think it's good to stay grounded to those types of things. I'm vacuuming way more than I care to.
I told my kid, the older one, that I'd give him $10 if he cleans both the toilets. Every single time he does it, he'll get $10. And he seemed really excited about the prospect of $10, and then like completely forgets that it was even on the table.
I would forget too. I hate it. I
I
don't care.
mean, this is why it was a deal. The point of this exercise was to explain to him that I really do not like doing that job, and that if he wants to make money, there's never ever going to be a time that he can't make the toilet cleaner and take $10 from me and me be happy. And
Well,
anytime, if it's twice a day.
when he gets a significant other, or car or a friend group that wants to go do things, the stakes will have been raised. So you'll
True.
probably get him to take you up on that.
I, I volunteer at school with the kids that are older so that I have a preview of what my kid is going to be. I don't I like to be in the school, but I don't necessarily like to be volunteering with my own kid because then he acts
Yeah.
up. But having the people at school know who I am, and then getting a couple years older, so I get the preview of what's it going to be like to have a sixth grader, and so that I'm not surprised by everything. I'll be surprised by some stuff, but I want to be surprised by all of it.
Well, I can tell you this from experience. With two boys, that's a different equation than a daughter in the mix. My daughter is easy and awesome, and both of my children are awesome. But there's a difference with boys for sure.
If my children were robots, you know what I would want to use with them?
Slicey.
Our next company, Ready Robotics.
Okay.
Okay, so this is hard one. This is a hard one to explain why it matters. This is a company that makes a front end for controlling industrial robots, and they're basically an operating system that's layered on top of proprietary controls. So if I have an ABB robot, a KUKA robot, a Yaskawa Motoman robot, those robots each have their own stack of software on the robot, software that you use to program the robot, tools for doing data collection, and Ready unifies all of that stuff into one dedicated interface across all brands. That means that they have to manage, their connections to each of the robots, but it also unifies the user experience. So they have two layers that matter. First is from the brand to their product, which is called Forge OS. That piece is all in the background. Then the other piece is, given that you have unified the data off the robots and to the robots, and basically created a set of adapters for each brand. From there, what are the applications that would be useful in robotics if you could apply it to a multi-brand fleet of robots? And so that's where you get to better analytics, more preventative maintenance applications. You do stuff with the fact that you now have universal access. So I like that a lot as a concept. Much like Intrinsic, this clearly checks the box of developer tools / specialist tools. It's a little bit less developer focused so far and a little bit more operator focused. But I feel like because of the value of that background stuff, Ready's in a good position to at some point have a hard pivot into really aiming at software developers based on having kind of opened up a market by creating easier connectivity to multiple brands.
So I have a real pressing question, and this is how we met, actually. Did they have to go to each of the robot OEMs that they are able to connect with and get authorization to the
Yes,
panel? Okay.
everyone. Yep.
Yeah. That was not a fun task, I'm sure.
Uh, no, and I mean, all of this stuff is proprietary to the company, so you can't actually get great visibility to exactly how that was done. But my understanding is that it's a mix of paid API access to the robots, plus negotiated deals to get access that would not otherwise be available. Presumably, some of that was free, some of it was licensed, and it was all very much specific on agreements between Ready and individual robot vendors. And then the last piece is, basically reverse engineering or just layering an extra set on top anyway. So if you have no access, there's no paid or public access, you can't negotiate a deal, you can always get in and basically create a mechanical shim, I guess, basically, where you go in and you kind of shortcut the signal and create use a hardwired connection to get the same thing that you otherwise would have gotten out of a software API.
Al, I'm curious, even the ones where they have formal relationships and haven't had to work a backdoor shim, I'm curious if all of the data points from the controller have been exposed to them, because
There's no way. There's no way.
that I I got the wrath. Let's just say that didn't go well for me when trying to get yaw pitch and roll data, and there are a lot of challenges with that anyway, but that's a really interesting company.
I also think that this is a situation where an individual cannonball shot against the wall of stubborn, entrenched players is never going to be enough. So
It takes
having
end users.
Yeah. So the lever here is by existing and by doing this hard work, Ready changes the expectations of end users, which causes many more end users to say, well, this is ridiculous that I'm paying for all these things, or it's ridiculous that I don't have access, or it's ridiculous that this other vendor that I want to use doesn't have access. And so by changing customer expectations and raising those, that has a huge impact and has, it's probably not good for Ready, but it'll also encourage competitors. And now you have, multiple people in the space. I would say Intrinsic, not exactly a competitor, but it's in the same ballpark. And now you have a lot of different entities that are kind of pressing the openness issue all at the same time, when otherwise that just wouldn't exist. So having a large barrage is helpful.
So I think that is and I haven't been dirt under the fingernails deep in industrial automation for a while now, but that was interoperability between protocols and controllers and systems has been a huge problem. But I think real true digitalization and manufacturing in industrial systems generally mandates interoperability and the ability to control your system or think of your system holistically and not a conglomeration of manufacturers particular software controllers. And I mean, that's how plants, that's how Toyota, that's how plants think of their manufacturer, their production environment. They think of it holistically. They don't think of it as Yaskawa arms and this
Mhm.
Bosch
Exactly.
slides and who were their servo vendors, one of the Japanese companies. They don't think of them and as these disparate parts. They think of it as production environment.
That's
But
right.
from a digitalization standpoint, there's not interoperability between all of those disparate systems, so it's a huge bottleneck. And I think that sounds interesting from Ready, for at least from a robotics standpoint.
I'm gonna drop my number 4 and go straight to my number 5, and I'm gonna skip you because it's very tightly related. So my number 5 is Trumpf, which is a sheet metal fabricating company. They
tread
make stamp
carefully. Tread carefully here.
Trumpf with a F. So they're German, and they make sheet metal, and they make or sheet metal processing equipment. So like stamping presses, punch presses, turb presses, lasers, these kind of things. And the company is not. I know this was a company thing, but it was a very specific thing they did. So they publicized on and they posted to GitHub an OPC server with a data model for some of their equipment as basically a test server of, if you want to connect to our equipment, you don't have to buy our machine, just connect to this server that is now living on the internet forever, and you can see tags in the machine from the internet. And they post that for the sake of allowing developers to query that information before buying a machine or before getting a control in their hands, a physical control in their hand. So that is, I don't think it's necessarily a direct response to pressure. It is an acknowledgement of a kind of obvious future state of affairs where posting posting more detailed models and data access is a critical part of your company. So that's it. That's all I have for Trumpf today, and I'm going to let you do your last two, and I'm going to drop my number 4.
I probably won't do two, but I'm curious. I do have a question about Trump. The
You really have to make sure it's a hard F in there.
Trump.
Yeah, there you go. Now you're good.
um, yeah. I don't personally care, but I know some people get bent out of shape
I just
about
want to
these
make
things.
sure that we're making clear that the two are different things. It's not a machine tool company called Trumpf. That's all I'm getting at here.
What's well, nobody. Anyway, I'll jump to my next one. I'll ask you that question offline. So a bunch of reasons why I like this company, but it's Aquagga is the name of the company. Aquagga, and they make um, let's call them sustainability products that can remove and process toxic chemicals from sludge or treatment facilities, whatever the discharge is called. I forget, effluent, whatever the discharge is called
That's what
from
it's
an
called.
effluent. Yeah, they can process those. They call them forever chemicals. That's such a hokey name, but they're really long lasting, have a really long half life. But this company can process these chemicals, and they've had a successful pilot in Fairbanks, Alaska, where I forget the name of the place. Let me check it up. An airport, yeah, an airport in Fairbanks, Alaska, where they treated 20,000 gallons of PFAS. That's the specific chemical or family of chemicals from an effluent wastewater plant from the airport. So a lot of things that are used in industrial and commercial processes as well have PFAs in them, and this company is making a dent in removing them. I don't know how well that will scale. I don't didn't get a lot of really detailed information on the technology itself, but I think that's an interesting company.
All right, I'm going to go back to your criteria. Your criteria were uniqueness, solves an emerging problem, and a new take. So basically, three variations on uniqueness.
Essentially, yes.
How does Aquaga compare on uniqueness?
It's not a there the technology is not like I think there are limitations to like filtration systems today, and I don't know what again, I'll have to do some digging on the technology, but I think that the difference is let me see if I can dig through this on the fly. um
I mean, I
yeah.
can tell you right now that the thread tying your choices together is definitely, this is stuff that is future looking, either big problem solving or big thinking around a problem that nobody's thinking about.
Yeah, I think this is fairly protected technology because they're dancing around specifically what it is. It annihilates the pollutants in a device that can reach high pressure and temperature. So there's probably yeah, it's a mechanical system, I'm sure, and something unique that can process the chemicals. But um, yeah, so future, those types of modular, it's what the equivalent to distributed generation, but for other technologies. I think as a model that makes sense, both in terms of services and hardware. And I think it makes sense across all sectors and across all technology disciplines. I think that model of getting away from one central behemoth, corporate structure that is responsible for this. I mean, it's the same kind of general concept as Bitcoin or um, things like that. But decentralized services, I think, are make a lot of sense, and this is one example of that. Um, I will get to. Let's just pull our last two and fold them into next week's segment. How's that sound?
I can give my last one that ties directly to my robotics and developer tools, and it's fast. This is a 30-second company,
All right, let's hear it.
and it's out of left field. So my last one is a even more famous company than Intrinsic in robotics. My last one is Universal Robotics, or Universal Robots. You are the company. So they're famous for making cobots, which are all silver with baby blue joints. These are the things they're most famous for. So cobots can be used right next to people. I don't care about the cobot angle of UR. I feel like that is somewhat interesting. It was very novel when they got famous for it. It is getting a whole bunch of fast followers in the industry. That's fantastic. However, that's basically old news at this point. The context in which I care about UR is that they have a publicly available, well documented, and clear API that you can just get to on their website, and there's not a bunch of hoops. So that's what they get on my list for. Is you have an API for your robot, and it looks like a developer would be looking for an API. Is it, am I ranking the quality of their API? No, maybe that's for later on, but in the in the existing state of affairs, you have one, and it looks kind of like I would be looking for as a developer. That's going to have to be good enough for this industry.
Well, I think solving problems is not always a whiz bang sexy solution. So
Yeah,
anyway, that was fun. It went fast.
it went fast. Five
Yeah,
companies, nine companies down, one to go. We're
I
gonna
only
hold them
did.
in. We'll hold them in suspense.
Yeah, I only did three. So I'll bring my two leftovers in for next
Yeah,
week.
you had two because I took a turn from you. All
It's
right,
all right.
I owe you big turn stealer.
Awesome. Have a good day, man.
See you next week.